Will I get bored playing this game?
No.
Quintillions of planets, huh? No Man's Sky is one of those games I have a bit of a past with. Not as far as doing regular content on this channel, but measured by the sheer amount of hours clocked into this game, roaming around finding planets, bombarding space pirates, and trying to figure out what to name my newest pet brontosaurus creature just in time for it to gnaw my face off. If you played No Man's Sky in 2016, you probably felt a lot of things. Displeasure and disappointment were likely among the two strongest sensations, but also confusion, accompanied with a sense of exploratory overload. It's one of those games that even when you take away all the bugs, all the problems, all the fabricated interviews talking about things that we thought would be in the game, it's still worth asking whether or not this concept was even worth attempting. The vast multitude of travel options paired with the extreme lack of direction made No Man's Sky feel less like the greatest sandbox game ever and more like an existential dread simulator. This is a story summarizing the fall and the rise of No Man's Sky. So, Hello Games, Sean Murray. It's October of 2016. Your company is officially the most hated of any development company that's ever received any mention, save maybe EA. You've got your publicity. Now, tell me what you plan to do with it. Well, No Man's Sky wasn't finished, or for that matter, barely playable, with very little satisfaction to be derived from its cyclical gameplay experience. Find materials and get credits to buy a ship so you can store more materials and get more credits so you can buy a ship to store more materials. What's the end game here, really? But as confusing and as much of a disorganized mess as it was, Hello Games and Sean Murray were pile-driven with such unanimously negative publicity that an investigation for false advertising was to be opened on Hello Games only a month or so later. This was where a critical decision had to be made. Sean Murray was labeled a liar, a con artist, and a disgrace to game development. I'm not using this video as a platform to tout my opinion of this person, but a lot of you watching probably still think that. But on the verge of company failure and being brought down by legal investigations, Hello Games made the choice to continue moving forward with the project, despite such overwhelming animosity from fans. Whether or not it was the right decision for the company is, 1, up for debate, and 2, not the focal point of this video. The ultimate point is, the legal investigation was lifted, and no penalties were enforced. Hello Games was in the clear, legally, but not in the eyes of the people that still believe they were cheated into buying a $60 version of Minecraft in space, only shittier. You have to remember that this game had so much hype around it that a leaked copy was bought by a Redditor a couple weeks before the official release date for over $1,200. This led to actual, genuine gameplay being divulged publicly. The gameplay was out, the reviews came pouring in, and it was above average. Playable, but mundane and uninspired. The hype train had officially derailed, and people started thinking clearer and thus made the decision that the game was barely worth a third of its leading price tag. And the idea of someone purchasing a leak of this game for over $1,200 was almost nauseating to some. And that was the problem. The game itself wasn't even that bad, but it wasn't what people were initially promised. There was no multiplayer support, game-breaking bugs that could potentially ruin the experience, and the cyclical, no-end nature of the gameplay that seemed as though it was designed as a time waster. Buy a ship, store more stuff, get more money, buy a ship, store more stuff, wash, rinse, repeat. This mundanity for such a hyped up game that received so many accolades for its innovation just couldn't be accepted. In the words of Jake Swearingen, you may be able to procedurally generate 18.6 quintillion planets, but that doesn't mean you've generated 18.6 quintillion things to do. Fast forward to November of 2016, Hello Games' first major attempt to salvage what was left of the game and resurrect the fan base that it had garnered. The Foundation update, the first of many free updates to come, introduced a difficulty selection somewhat akin to the Minecraft selection, with Creative Mode, Normal, and Survival Mode. You could farm materials, literally, build your own space homes, interplanetary bases, and stuff like that. It was a nice gesture, but the game still felt empty in comparison to what Sean Murray and the team labeled it as. The Foundation update brought back a few previous installers, only for them to eventually die out soon after. And not a few weeks later, the state of the game returned to its initial stagnation. Next came the Pathfinder patch, which introduced another new concept of driving vehicles, making exploration much easier, and a lot of the pitfalls of the exploration in the vanilla game started smoothing themselves out. No longer would you need the help of a jetpack or a sprint function to get to where you needed to go, when now you can just hop into one of these babies and start doing donuts around the planet's surface. The patch notes are visible and completely readable on the Hello Games website, and in addition to the new content, they've also made smaller quality of life changes that makes materials easier to store, improved texturing, and little by little, the game began to garner a following of fans not of the game, but of the development team itself. It soon became noticed that previous naysayers of No Man's Sky returned to the community and decided to take up defense for Hello Games, telling others to have faith and that they're finally starting to move in the right direction. The Atlas Rises update was the third and the largest of them all. Lots of changes to not only the game's content, but also how the game was played fundamentally. Star systems now having their own economies, deeper lore added to certain interactions between other life forms, a branching storyline, S-class ship designs, guild missions, the ability to join factions. For the first time in literally over a year, No Man's Sky finally started feeling like a game. The Pathfinder and Foundation updates gave way to a massive spike in installers just before excitement for the game fizzled out again. But for the Atlas Rises update, things started to change. The game was still uninstalled after a short couple weeks from a lot of systems, but the point of plateau this time was noticeably higher, and the game received tons more regular players. No Man's Sky was starting to build a community. I remember first playing the game back in 2016 upon its vanilla release. It really does feel like a completely different game. It looks like No Man's Sky, only if an entirely different second team got hold of the source code and just went haywire with mods and textures and things of that nature. And I think that's why No Man's Sky is slowly, surely starting to win back its audience. It's not only getting better, but it's doing more than that. It's fulfilling the dream we had for this game a couple years ago, and the game is becoming more and more aware of its shortcomings and doing whatever it can to lay the patchwork for a better game so that the experience we were promised could be a reality. But something is missing, isn't there? Sean Murray delighted in the fact that this game would contain so many options to travel, so many planets, and a wealth of exploration that was almost overwhelming. But it's lonely, traveling a galaxy from system to system like that. No Man's Sky needs more than just a following. It needs a multiplayer community. This was also suggested as part of the game during its pre-release. The freedom to not only interact with species of creatures, animals, and other life forms, but a bartering system. Real interactions with other players that allow total immersive control of your experience. It really was supposed to feel like this living, breathing, functioning society. The 29th of March, 2018. Hello Games releases an update on their patch notes. A free update to PC and console users that is now currently being enjoyed by the community this game has attracted. No Man's Sky Next. To name a few perks: dramatically increased base building complexity and size limits, hundreds of new base parts, in addition to owning multiple bases at once, create racetracks to share online and race other players as adversaries, or just gather a squad, log in, and cruise around with your fire team in a vast open world. And that's literally not even a fourth of what they've added. If you'd like the full patch update with all its details, I'll go ahead and link that in the description of this video so you can read it at full. The story of how a game developer, whom 2 years ago was being investigated publicly for false advertisement and intellectual property infringement, has managed to resurrect this project from what many people thought to be the point of no return. No Man's Sky had alternatives, and lots of them. As in, there were plenty of games you could play in lieu of spending a full $60 on an unfinished whatever this was. Subnautica, Abzu, Don't Starve. Hell, if you had a craving for interstellar video gaming, you could have just went with the tried and true Mass Effect or Dead Space series. But the fact that Hello Games had the opportunity to run from this project, but instead decided to buckle down and get shit done, earns them my devoted respect as an organization, and I look forward to playing even more of the next update once I finish editing this video. For the first time in basically ever, No Man's Sky finally feels less like an ambitious college video game project with no exploring incentive, and more like what we were told it was going to be. You may not be able to do 18.6 quintillion things in the game, but chances are there are going to be at least a few million players that pick this up again looking to grind it out and eventually get to where they're piloting the fucking X-Wing, crashing it into trees and bases and stuff like they own the cosmos. Hello Games gets my full respect as a video game company because the opportunity to abandon this project and chalk it up as a loss had to have been tempting to take as a business, cutting your losses and stopping the bad from getting undeniably worse. A development team that ignores the negative feedback they're getting while also listening to the complaints of their fan base is not something you see ordinarily, even from other indie developers. On the Atlas Rises update, a 5% of gamers that re-downloaded the game ended up being sucked into its new universe, playing it at an impressive total of over 1,000 hours. And that was their biggest update out of the 3. But No Man's Sky Next, the 4th update, has indisputably brought the largest amount of content and the most amount of fundamental changes, and I can only see that 5 percentile increasing from here. In addition to a microtransaction-less calendar of weekly community events, along with the update, I can confidently say I might be finding a new pastime learning the new No Man's Sky. One day, I hope to reach a point where I feel No Man's Sky is finished, but luckily there's still so much more we want to do. Working on Next feels important to us, but I know it's not the end of the journey. We know the journey would be more fun together. Signed, Sean Murray. Well then, Hello Games, you've got my attention.